Welcome to the Agency Founder Podcast. Are you ready to grow your marketing agency? We pull back the curtain to show you how real marketing agency founders struggled, built, and scaled their agencies. Practical advice, lessons learned, wins, and losses. We hold nothing back. Now your host, Jeremy Sonny.
Welcome to the Agency Founder Podcast by Moonshine Marketing. Every single week, we interview successful founders of marketing agencies at different points in their journey to pass on their victories, defeats, challenges, and lessons learned to help you take your agency to new heights. This week, we're speaking with Blake Driver of Root Marketing, a performance marketing agency focused on e-commerce between 1 to 20 million in revenue.
Hey, thanks for having me. Really stoked to be on and chat with you for a little bit today.
Yeah, so 1 to 20 million. I assumed you didn't start with 1 to 20 million in revenue e-commerce companies, or maybe you did at the beginning of, sort of your personal marketing journey. How did you kind of get into marketing and what is your agency really focused on today?
Yeah, so I kind of got into marketing basically back in high school. I graduated high school in 2009. And like around that time, it was the time where everyone on Facebook was just like liking pages for fun. So I saw that as kind of like an opportunity to kind of make something that got a lot of likes on it. So I made a bunch of pages with really generic things that people would probably like love being American. Like who doesn't love being American, right? So I got a bunch of likes on that stuff. And that's how I kind of started to see the power of social media and business. So I went to business school. After business school, I started working for an agency, and it was actually the worst job I'd ever had.
Really?
I worked a lot of weird jobs in high school and college, and this was by far the worst job I had ever had. It was basically a very aggressive agency owner pitching people strategies and products that would like just not get them their goals. So after about like 8 months of working there, I was like, all right, screw this. I can do my own thing way better and actually get people results. So I left, and I was fortunate enough where my dad and uncle, they had a graphic design company. And so I went ahead and opened up a marketing department on there.
Oh, that's really cool. So kind of like a intrapreneur in a way, right? Like at the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't completely on my own. I definitely had some help, and they had a few clients that we were able to get up and running with. But a bulk of our first like chunk of business came from just spending like 20 grand on Google AdWords on the basic keywords you would use to get going.
Yeah, those were I feel like a little bit easier back in 2009, but you feel free to correct me. I wasn't quite doing stuff in 2009. I started in, 2011, 12. So a little bit later than you, but I did graduate high school in 2008. So right around the same age. That's pretty cool. That's like a really interesting story, Do you think that like your family opening a graphic design firm kind of helped like prepare you for like agency land a little bit more, like understanding, kind of how the process works and like all of that? And obviously while graphic design isn't one-to-one with marketing, it's kind of in the same sort of like vein. Do you think that was like a kind of an advantage?
Yeah, I think it was a huge advantage. I mean, I was able to come into something that was already running, take advantages of the systems in place, and just kind of improve upon and grow with them where I could. So yeah, I would be kidding myself if I didn't think it was a big advantage to come in like that.
No, for sure. No, I think it's super interesting, right? And like, more than just like the, kind of obvious ones, I think that it's like really interesting, like kind of the knowledge, right? And like understanding the mindset. I think a lot of people maybe are like good at marketing, but like don't necessarily understand agency business processes. You know what I mean? Like, would you say that that was kind of like a helpful template to kind of get that part going and like understand like the business? Like, tell me a little bit about that, like, and what are the differences between like running a graphic design firm or, from what you could see versus, running a marketing agency?
Yeah, when I came in, as terrible as the last agency that I worked at was, it did give me like a really interesting insight into how things were run day to day at their marketing company. It was cool to see, and I was able to bring some of that knowledge over to Root when I first started. They're very similar. The only difference is, with graphic design, there's a lot of one-off projects where with marketing, clients are mainly on retainer basis. So that was kind of like the biggest difference. But I want to say like the core foundation of running a graphic design agency or a marketing agency is kind of the same. You want to keep your clients happy, provide good work, fair pricing, all of that. So I wouldn't say I noticed like too much of a difference other than just how things were priced out and how the relationships were kind of built over time. I felt like you probably have a closer relationship with your marketing clients than you do people that you just do graphic design for.
Right. That is interesting. Yeah. The nature of the kind of ongoing versus one off and kind of how that can like affect like business decisions and like, day to day operations. Speaking of, can you kind of tell me about like, all right, you set up this marketing agency kind of inside this graphic design agency and like you're kind of figuring out what that day to day looks like. Can you tell me about like what those early days were like? Like, what did you spend your time doing? Were you out pounding pavement, like trying to find clients? Were you pitching to like the existing graphic design clients? Like, how are you setting up processes, building teams? Like, just tell me all about that.
Yeah, the very first thing, we did was we had to put our name out there and make an announcement that Root Marketing was now doing marketing, essentially. So we kind of went after existing clients that we had on the graphic design side, and we definitely got a few of them, but it wasn't enough to get going. So that's where like Google AdWords came in. So basically, I did a two approach strategy. I started writing a ton of blog content and posting that on our blog and on LinkedIn. And then I started advertising on Google Ads. And from there, we are basically able to get a base chunk of clients, like a really good amount to where things were able to get going.
Yeah. And in those early days, would you say that you kind of took like, were you like always like focused on e-commerce? Were you focused on like more just general anybody that needs marketing? Like, tell me about that sort of, decision-making process and like, did that evolve over time and why? That's really interesting to me.
Yeah, so I basically was willing to take on anything. I didn't know what area I wanted to focus in with digital marketing. I was a media buyer first. I did a lot of copywriting and emails, but as far as like industries, I was kind of open to anything. So I did a lot of ecom, lead gen, local business stuff. Local business stuff was really big at first, just working with some brands around here. And then as like I kind of got to taste all these different types of verticals and areas, I felt e-commerce to me was one of the most rewarding ones because it was like instant feedback right away, right? You know what's working and what's not so quickly. I really love that. I love seeing the dollars in, dollars out. Whereas like with lead gen, I could get you the leads, but then, someone might not be able to close the sale. So it's a little different. I love the instant gratification.
I have learned like that, right? Like I've done some, fair amount of lead gen and I still do actually to some degree. But yeah, it's interesting, then you get into conversations about marketing qualified lead versus sales qualified lead. So the kind of the speed though, and the ability to kind of like own that universe is that what you'd say that attracted you to e-commerce?
Yeah, it was that. And I always, since I was little, I always like wondered, like, how do you get someone to buy something? Like, I'd go maybe walking down Toys R Us and I'd look at a car and I'd be like, how does someone get someone else to like buy this toy car? I was always kind of fascinated with that. And e-commerce it kind of just segues into that. Like, how do I get people to buy this random product from a company they've never heard of online?
That's really interesting. Yeah, the psychology around it. Do you read like a lot of psychology? Is that kind of your focus, or like, tell me about that.
Yeah, in college, I was like a business admin major, and I they do like marketing psychology as one of the classes, and I was terrible at it. I was so bad at it,
Hmm.
but which meant I had to study more. But then that got me really interested in it. So after that, I just started reading a ton of books about psychology. I just thought it was always like these interesting approach, like these little triggers or angles, little strings to pull that can help guide people towards the sale.
That's really interesting. Yeah. What would you say in like an e-commerce campaign, right, is the most important part? Is it, the offer, the creative, the like media buying, getting in front of the right people, like, and when you're crafting, that most important part, like how do you think about that? I'd love to like kind of pick your brain and get, a little bit of insight there.
So I used to think that the offer was like the most important part. And I still think the offer is extremely important. But I was selling this one product that wasn't that great and it wasn't very unique. And There's a million clones of this product out there. But the one thing that we had differently was an amazing piece of creative. We had a 10-minute influencer video. And because that video was so good and so well received on social media, we were able to just sell the crap out of it. And to me, the creative, I think, is the most important part because you can convince someone from a piece of creative to buy a product or get it on an offer that may or may not be that great. I mean, you have to have your pricing down. If this product was priced at an extreme premium, it never would have sold, right? It was priced fairly, but I think the creative was extremely important. Now, is it great for brand building? Probably not. You need to have the offer dialed and make sure you're actually selling something people want for brand building. But for like selling a one-off, and still today, I still think that creative is probably the most important thing when crafting an ad. And by that I mean like the video or the image.
No, I really like that actually. That's super interesting because I hear a lot of different kind of approaches, right? And like, my personal background is I focus just pretty much exclusively on media buying, which it is what it is. Like I understand that like it's not the most important part. I would actually agree that either, the offer or the creative is the most important part. And I hear a lot of times offer, but I also hear creative. So it's interesting to see kind of how folks kind of fall on that spectrum as to what's the most important piece. I wonder, yeah, I like how you brought up brand building too. Do you think it's kind of like if you take that sort of approach and you just have like a killer creative and you could sell like kind of a meh product, like you got like what, one, two, three of those before people are like, all right, fool me once, fool me twice, like I'm not gonna buy this thing again or whatever, right? Or am I like totally off base?
No, I totally agree. I mean, people would buy this product and, most of them would maybe use it once or not even use the whole thing. And then they would never come back. And in today's day and age, like you can't do that. It's all about payback periods and CLTV, right? So you have to really make sure that people are actually going to want the product you have and then come back for more. If you don't do that, then you're done. I mean, you can't do it anymore.
I have a theory, and I want to hear your thoughts on my theory. I have a theory that the reason that a lot of those sort of offers worked early on is because the media was underpriced. I don't think Facebook was charging a fair rate like 5, 6, 7 years ago, and I think that you could basically just brute force get a product through, and people would be like super, somebody would buy it, right? Like there wasn't that many ads on Facebook, right? And then like the media was cheap, and so you could just like basically make it work on like a ROAS, a return on ad spend sort of perspective without it necessarily being like the greatest product in the world. What do you think about that kind of from the early days of Facebook?
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, you could run an offer and get like 3 to 5x out of it and be completely golden and make a lot of money. Today, the returns aren't even, they're not there. They're not what they used to be. Everything's more expensive and more fairly priced now. So to have these one-offs, like you really need to be brand building or else you're going to be done. You can't just survive off of a single offer unless, of course, it's like a high ticket item, but we're working with like, 40 to $60 AOVs.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. So that's interesting. So like kind of going back to the, kind of agency building process. So you've got the early days, you're kind of taking everything, you're like, okay, e-commerce, the instant gratification, the ability to control it. I don't have to rely on some sales guy who complains about the leads all the time because he doesn't want to pick up the phone. Like, so you're there, right? Tell me about that. Like you're like, okay, I'm going to specialize in e-commerce. How do you go about like specializing practically? And what does that process look like to say, okay, I'm going to go find specifically e-commerce clients for this and build a team around, just doing this great e-commerce work?
Yeah. So once I decided, I wanted to full dive into e-commerce, my main thing was to learn as much about it as I could with e-com marketing. So really learn all the different channels because I was primarily focused on Facebook at first, and then I branched out to go learn Google Ads, Pinterest, Reddit, Snap. So I've kind of tried to go and
Reddit.
branch out through all that. Yeah, you love Reddit, don't you?
I love Reddit. I'm a big Reddit. I'm the Reddit advocate, but yeah, yeah. Keep going. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no worries. And then, then go into email marketing, conversion rate optimization, revenue optimization, and just seeing and learning about how all of these things play together and what each client kind of needs. And then creative development. after getting a good foundation and working with the clients I already had to really get an understanding, build out their different areas, it was then easier to start putting in processes in place, to having like different structures down of knowing like exactly, okay, a new client comes to you, they're an e-commerce client. They don't have anything. Here's the basics of what an e-com template looks like to be successful. So getting the automated emails in place, getting manual email campaigns in place, setting up the media buying, sourcing the creative, and running the split test, and kind of building a team out around that area where we can all go and execute on getting the client up and running.
So when you're building that team out, are you looking for like just people that are great at ecom? Are you like building specialists? Talk to me about like putting together a team for a project.
Yeah. So the first thing I'm always trying to do is I have a team of people who we can rely on for creative. So we have a list of a bunch of different creatives that we work with, and these people can produce us different types of video content depending upon what we need, right? So we look at a product, we're like, you know what, this type of video will crush with it. Well, this guy, Weston, makes these types of videos. Amazingly, we're going to hit him up and we're going to get a video developed. So we go through our list and start sourcing the creative. And that's usually something that either myself or another person here will take on. And then after that, we kind of dive into getting like the copywriting. So we have a copywriter on staff who will then go and take charge of getting all of the emails created and written. And then we also have a graphic designer on staff and creative director. So after all the copies written, everything's passed off to him for all the design.
That's interesting. So it sounds like you take sort of like do you have like a playbook? Do you like start with like that playbook every time? Like how do you approach it from like kind of a strategy perspective, those new clients?
Yeah, it is a playbook. And that's literally what I call it. It just sits on my computer and it's kind of like our agency playbook. And we like to kick things off kind of in two different ways. Every client's different. So we can't always do this, but we kind of like to jump in by really understanding the customers first, like understand who their customer base is, who their best customers are, and then start developing content around that. Everything's very content focused. So once we know who the best customers are, then we start developing creative that is going to work and start writing copy that we think is going to work and kind of match those personas or angles that we think will trigger people. From there, that's like the foundation. And then we start building out the campaigns.
Yeah, so like the actual like, media buying operations is kind of the like last step, as it were, in your process.
Yeah, usually that. And then like, actually going in and setting up all of the emails as well. Because email marketing is pretty big for us. It's a good chunk of our business.
It's a huge booster, right, to anything that I do. A lot of the people I work with are all over Klaviyo. It's the difference between running a 2x campaign and like a 10x campaign. You know what I mean? Having a solid follow-up script and, having like smart cross sells, right? Like of like commonly purchased together items and things like that. So I have to imagine that that's probably the way that you're using it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. There's like 5 standard flows we set up for everyone. At the end of the day, email still makes so much money. It's between 15 to 30% of most of our clients' revenue. So it's awesome to see it work well.
Are you doing stuff with SMS these days? I know that's like kind of a hot thing that's, starting to get more and more popular.
Yeah, we dipped our toes into SMS during Q4. And I don't know if you follow like any of the brands who do it really heavily, like Boll and Branch, the Greats. They do a ton of it and they do it horribly. Like it's so bad because it's kind of like they push it out like an email, like, hey, sale today, get 30% off. And with one of our brands, basically what we did was we had one of our customer service reps, like I'll just say her name's Lisa, and we're like, hey, it was basically we made it very personal, like, hey, it's Lisa here from X company. I'm not sure if you saw, but we're having a sale today. Let me know if you're interested in anything and I can help you out.
That's interesting. I see a lot of big brands taking a similar tack to like Twitter of all things. You know what I'm saying? Like they'll add like their personal names to like the tweets they send out and stuff and like really kind of make it more conversational. You're finding success with that, like in the SMS sort of market?
Yeah, it worked extremely well. Like the return on it in instant sales we got from it was insane. And then the amount of people who wrote back and like actually we engaged them in conversations. Like it was intense. We had like full on text message conversations helping people choose the right product, answering just common questions that they had. And it was obvious that like the return, it was there. It was immediate. It was like a 5x right away from what we invested in it.
Wow, that's pretty incredible. I love hearing that. So something to keep in the, kind of in the lab for me at some point, right? But, kind of talking more about like agency stuff, right? What would you say is your biggest lesson learned, from growing and obviously, going from kind of everything to we're going to do e-commerce and then going for like these big e-commerce clients, and really getting this like playbook together. What's like the biggest struggle, lesson learned, good or bad, right? It could be struggle and a loss that you learned a lot from, or like just a big win that you're like, we're doubling down here. This is the way that we want to do things.
I think one of the biggest lessons learned is you can't let running an agency control your whole life outside of work. So there were, times when I could work easily like 80 plus hours a week, just working at work, working at home. And I just eventually figured out that there's a better way to do it, and that's by having better structure in place. So structuring things, delegating more, having the systems in place where you can really have a good flow between everyone and get everything done, I think was kind of like my biggest lesson learned. Like, because that was just not my strong point, was getting the processes dialed from taking work off my shoulders and putting it into other places. So I think doing that last year was a huge lesson learned.
For sure, yeah. I mean, I know that I've had like personally a lot of troubles with like burnout and stuff in the past, or like doing those 80 weeks, like you have to do them, right? Like at some
Yeah,
level.
they're obviously always going to happen.
Yeah.
They're inevitable.
But you can't do them every week forever, like that's yeah. Yeah, no, I've definitely had issues where I was like, man, like sometimes I'm like, I just gotta like I gotta hang it up. This is ridiculous. Any insight into building said processes?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think it is work with people you trust and hire people that you trust, and then delegate to them. And don't be afraid. Don't think you have to constantly touch everything. It's okay if you want to look at everything, but you don't have to intimately be involved in everything that goes on if you're hiring and trusting people, because they can get it done. And if you're doing the right thing, they can hopefully get it done better than you can, right?
Right. So would you say like be open to people doing things in like a slightly different way than you would do them because it might be like better?
Yeah, exactly. Like one of the things that I do when I hire creatives is like I just don't tell them what to do. I have an idea and I let them go and execute on it, because I am not creative. I couldn't do anything with a video camera or a camera. Like I suck at that. So I'm just like completely hands off. And even if you know something and you think you know it well, like let other people do it and give them space to get into their craft.
100%. I love hearing that. Yeah, it's a lesson I've learned, myself recently, right? Where like I was like, okay, I have like a really smart, a couple really smart people that I like was able to bring on, and just like, okay, I'm gonna take a step back and like I'm not gonna actually run this account. We're gonna meet on it once a week, and we're gonna go through what happened, what you think we're gonna do next, and like it's wild how much more balanced I feel, but also like it's performing better too because they're doing things differently, and then I'm adding another perspective, and like between those we're actually getting better results than if I was just like white knuckle trying to do everything. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%. It ends up improving everything overall. And you're like, wow, I could have been doing this the whole time.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
I did have that moment too. Yeah. Cool. Well, Blake, I really appreciate the advice here. I think that it was really helpful. I think we got into some fun tactics, some great strategy, learning about kind of your background journey as well as, kind of lessons learned and some, advice, practical advice for folks to take to grow their agency, today. I always let my guests pitch something for 1 or 2 minutes just at the end of this. So I want to go ahead and let you pitch whatever you'd like.
If you want to follow me on Twitter, that'd be awesome. My handle is Blake A Driver. And then if you're on TikTok, follow me on TikTok as well at Blake_driver. So follow me on there.
Okay. Twitter and TikTok. There we go. I haven't had a TikTok pitch yet. Getting in early.
Yeah, I'm getting in early. Weekly marketing tips on TikTok. Just, stay tuned for them.
Do it. That's awesome. All right. Well, Blake, thank you so much. For everybody listening, take this advice to heart. Grow your agency today, and happy marketing, everybody.